Welcome to episode 31. Is it 31 today, Scott?
It is 31 today, sir.
31. Okay, I missed last week, so I wasn't sure if last week was 31 and if I lost track of it. But episode 31 of the Long Toss here on the Walk-Off. I am Adam Mack, joined as always by Scott Belford, and becoming more and more frequent on Long Toss, Garth. So today's episode is the Fergie Jenkins episode. One of two.
Oh yeah, last week was 31.
Was it? Was last week the Fergie Jenkins episode?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm not looking up a 32 on the spot. So today, in honor of 700 home runs, he earned it. Today is the Albert Pujols episode.
Okay, I like it.
All right, let's give it to him. Welcome everybody. I see we've got about a dozen people joining us in YouTube so far, and I'm sure that number will grow throughout the show. We are recording this live Sunday night, as we do every Sunday night. We have Baseball Jen, going to be joining us here very shortly. And Hey Kami is working on his movie right now, so he may pop in, may pop out as we go. We got a lot to talk about today, though. We got a review of that Blue Jays and Rays series. We were heading for an ugly sweeping, but our pitchers and the whole team kind of turned things around in the second half of that series. So very cool there. We're going to talk Alek Manoah and the phenomenal season he has had. We're going to talk Whit Merrifield. Heck of a weekend, I guess you'd say, down in the Trop. Matt Chapman. We're going to give our, season in review thoughts on Matt Chapman. I know we're a couple weeks early, but here we go. We're going to make playoff roster predictions. Are the Blue Jays really going to carry 6 outfielders and 3 catchers? Albert Pujols, as I just mentioned, 700 home runs for Albert Pujols. He did it legitimately. He didn't limp across the finish line with a 4 home run season next year or anything. So very cool for Albert Pujols. Meanwhile, Aaron Judge having a pretty memorable season of his own. Needs no introduction there, but we're going to check in with him. His chase for the AL home run record and the Triple Crown status there in the AL. Seattle Mariners, Luis Castillo, big signing of a contract there out on the West Coast. We're going to talk that. We're going to talk their injury concerns, and I guess we're going to check back in on that game against the Royals. Last I checked, it was the 9th inning, and they had blown an 11-1 lead. So we'll check in on the Mariners in that AL wildcard race. Tampa Bay Rays have some injuries.
That game's over. That. They lost it. Officially lost it.
Mariners lost it. Okay, there you go. Mariners lost it. So the wild card as it stands today, Blue Jays, 2 games up on the Rays, and then 1 game behind the Rays is the Mariners. So there we go. I believe Jays don't have tiebreaker on either of those teams. So really,
they need to out and out.
Really, we have a 1-game lead on the wild card for home field advantage. But there you go. And then the Cleveland Guardians, red hot, having a great September. This AL Central really could have been up for grabs right down to the end of the wire there with the White Sox and the Twins, but Cleveland has just been a battering ram, winning the games they needed to win. So we're going to check out the Cleveland Guardians. That is the list for today, Scott, Garth, Jen, whenever you're ready. Let's get to it. Before we do, today's episode and every episode all summer long has been brought to you by Team Oh My, Out Hustle My Yesterday. Big thanks to Duncan and the team over at Team Oh My. Good Canadian apparel, athletic gear. TeamOhMy.com. Out hustle your yesterday today. And then lastly, let's get the big thanks out to the Patreon. So patreon.com/The Walk-Off Podcast. $1 a week. Support the show if you have the coffee budget to do so. But big shout out to Kyle, Joey, Patrick, Wyatt, John, Dunedin, Bob, Abraham, Michael, Sarah, John, Simon, Rashid, Joshua, Jeremy, and Ian. There we go. All right, housekeeping is out of the way. Let's talk Jays and Rays. We were kind of talking a little bit behind the scenes here before we just went live. And of course, as I say that, Jen is now in the waiting room, so let's let her in.
Lovely.
Scott, well, we're waiting for Jen to join before we get to all the topics, I suppose. I'm rusty at this. Let's do proper introductions here, right? Jen, nice to see you.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
That's all right. We are bumbling our way through things as always. Scott, I know you had a busy weekend with the comedy festival there in Calgary.
Yes.
How did it go? You
Craft
launched
Island
your
Comedy
debut
Fest.
album.
It went really well. I had my album release party on Thursday. Staying Together for the Cat is now available on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to your albums. And yeah, I can now quit comedy. I've done it.
Very cool. You've peaked.
That's right.
All right. Garth, that is a heck of a vintage Blue Jays hat. Lean in. Let's get a good look at that. Oh, that's a beauty.
Oh, that is a beauty.
Is that like original vintage or is that like a throwback?
Yeah. And it's got like the logo on the side. It's got the Blue Jays on the back. So it's got. I think this is like right around. Look at the tag here. Yeah, logo 7. I think this is probably around 2003, 2002. So somewhere in there.
Very cool. All right. Well, nice to see you. As always, Jen, running late, but she made it. Better late than never, as they say. How's Jen doing today? Do you have a good weekend?
Quiet, but yeah, it's been okay.
Okay.
You know,
stay quiet. Quiet is good. No news is good news, right? That's what they say.
The older you get, the quieter you want it to be, it seems.
There you go. I definitely can relate to that. Okay, we're going to jump right into it now. Jays take 2 out of 4 in the Trop down in Tampa Bay, Old St. Pete. After the way this series started, that sure feels like a win, right?
Yeah.
I would have taken 2 of 4 regardless, like without the way it started, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the best I was hoping for.
Going into the weekend, 2 out of 4 on the road. Definitely felt like we'd be happy with that. But after those first 2 games, I was puckering in my pants. I will admit that. Do we want to start with the good or the bad? The 2 we won or the 2 we lost? Where do we go? Let's get the ugly stuff out of the way first. Jose Barrios. What's there left to say about this Jose Barrios dance?
I mean, if I'm Jose Barrios, I'm saying things like bring on 2023. Like, I don't know. Like, it has been such a crazy, weird season for that man. He hasn't gone through anything like this in his career. He, I don't know. Like, you got to throw him out there. Like, they're going to need 4 starters in the playoffs. I think we're going to see him continue to be, especially with their hands tied with Mitch White and Kikuchi as is. But boy, my trust in him is gone. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but feels like a real roll of the dice when he's on the bump.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You're gambling every time he goes out there, and it really shouldn't be that way. And it's baffling, right? Like, he's either pretty good or he's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And there's kind of no in between. And there doesn't seem to be sort of like a consistent pattern to it or any rhyme or reason where you can sort of point your finger and say, oh, that's what's happening. I mean, we were talking about the potential that he was tipping pitches earlier in the season, right? And I'm guessing that's not the case, or they might have figured that out by now. He just every so often, every 2 or every third time he goes out there, can't pitch.
Like, you hear the old adage in baseball all the time that every single pitcher out there 25% of the time is going to have his best stuff, 25% of the time is going to have no control or his stuff at all, and it's the other 50% that makes a good pitcher. And we've seen that out of Alek Manoah. We've seen it out of Ross Stripling, them not be able to pick and locate their spots in some of their pitches and still manage to get through the outings. And that just has not been the case for Barrios. It's been a really odd thing to watch.
Well, we've seen like Manoah got it out when he was ill, right? For instance, or, and I know, we saw Stripling go from the pen into a starting role that he wasn't expecting to fill and make that transition look absolutely seamless, right? And so that's the thing, right? And then you're looking at Barrios, who has been there. He's not a rookie, right? He's not still trying to figure out his stuff or anything like that. He signed this really big extension,
Yeah.
right? Which showed how much faith the front office had in his past performance and how that was being projected into future performance. And you really don't necessarily want to watch one of his starts.
No. Adam,
Okay.
what have you thought when you watch Jose Barrios?
Well,
Do
okay,
you have
Jose.
any confidence in him?
I mean, like Jen said, there doesn't appear to be any real like discernible pattern into, when is he pitching well, when is he pitching off. Like he is. I'm just looking at the home and away splits right now. It's significantly worse on the road. Like his ERA in away games 6.75, ERA in home games 3.98. The WHIP also reflects that 1.567 on the road, 1.279 at home. Ks per 9 up at home, walks per 9 up on the road.
As somebody who was at the home opener, though, I do find that those splits hard to believe, because that home opener was god awful. But like, it makes you wonder, does he just have that much better of a mattress at home that he gets better sleep?
Whatever it is, but here's what I want to consider. I mean, like let's look beyond the wild card round. Not to put the cart before the horse, right? But like there are 4 rounds we are going to need to win if that's the plan this year. In the ALDS, in the ALCS, where we are going to have games at home and on the road, is that, I mean, because we're going to have to pitch Barrios in the playoffs.
Of course.
Right? Is that a consideration? Are we going to try and line up the pitching rotation in a way where he's only having to pitch at home? Or are we over tinkering at that point? Like, what would you do, Scott? Would you, if possible and in a reasonable manner, be able to like give him an extra day off in order to make him pitch in the Rogers Center in game 3 as opposed to game 2 in New York?
So I was actually talking about this with a couple buddies just like last night, and the Jays are almost in a situation right now where when they go to the playoffs, they're going to need to take it day by day. I think Alek Manoah, without a doubt, is your number 1 starter. And if they win that game, then I think you flip the script and you go to Stripling game 2 and hope that you can sweep that wild card and start game 1 of the ALDS with Kevin Gausman. Maybe give Alek Manoah and Stripling a little bit of rest if you can. Maybe start Barrios game 2 and then go 3-4 and flip back to Kevin Gausman. Like, I think maybe loosely you have Gausman scheduled in that game 2, but if you don't need to use him, I think that's the way they need to play this, because you want to be able to pitch Barrios as little as possible until you absolutely need to. And you don't want Barrios starting that game 1 of the ALDS, which is how it would line up if they wind up going Manoah, Gausman, Stripling, right?
Well, and like we talked about on Friday, Scott, this is almost the real value of having Manoah pitch game 162, right? Like, it sure would suck to play a wild card series without your best pitcher, but if we can, sure would be nice to have him twice against the Yankees or twice against Justin Verlander and those Houston Astros.
Like Alek Manoah, and I know we're going to talk about him in just a few minutes, but he's pitched 35 innings in September. He has a 1.03 ERA. He's had 7 starts. He's 3-0 and a whip of 0.89. Like, you want him in as many playoff games as you can maneuver, however you got to do it to get him out there.
Well, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, but this was going to be my talking point for tonight, and we're going to talk Alek Manoah. So let's just do it, because this is my topic. Alek Manoah, is he crossing that threshold into ace category, or is it still too early to put him on that echelon of pitchers? Because, I mean, you know, there is a difference between a team's number one guy and a legitimate ace. But
so producer with Sportsnet, who's joining us on the show tomorrow, Chris Black at Down to Black on Twitter, said just the other day, congratulations to Alek Manoah making his 50th career start. That was the game yesterday that he won. Since his career started, he's 23-9. He's got an over 700 winning percentage. His ERA is 2.71 with a WHIP of 1.02. 295K, which, by the way, he did break 300K in that game. So he is the youngest Blue Jay to ever hit 300 strikeouts. I mean, you just read those numbers off. I think it's pretty obvious he's an ace, right?
well, and Garth, welcome back. We're just having this topic about Alek Manoah.
Hey, I think my internet's just dog shit right now. It's not.
All right. Some struggles there from Garth. Maybe we can get it sorted out. We'll see. Jen, before I throw to you, I just want to read from the YouTube comment section here. Christopher Oliver says, yes, absolutely an ace. Dulcimerist puts it, an ace steps up to stop losing skids so the team can rally and get back on pace. It goes deep into games in order to rest and reset the bullpen. Alek Manoah is an ace. That game, man, against the Rays, I mean, 7 shutout innings. Late in September.
Pitches.
Like, I mean, I texted you, absolute horse, right? Like, this is, like, I'm speechless at what Alek Manoah has done. He's never pitched this many innings ever in his life before, and he just continues to get better. Like, big game after big game, he continues to show up, and I keep waiting for that letdown game where, you know, he shows his youth and his inexperience, but he just keeps rising to the occasion.
He does. I know Jordan N just brought his age up here in the YouTube chat, and he says too young to be an ace. So,
well,
I would like to see one more season from him before I anoint him the label ace. And that doesn't mean that he isn't performing like an ace right now, right? He is absolutely performing like an ace right now. But to actually, because as you said, there is a difference between your number one starter and an actual legitimate league defined ace. So I would like to see just one more season out of him. But I think he's certainly, what he's shown thus far, he's well on his way to literally earning that title and having it, you know, not just fans in Toronto fans that are watching and talking about this way about him.
No, and I feel that, Jen. I get that. I mean, you look at the history of top starters throughout the game, and, you know, you look at guys like James Shields, right? But if you look at their full body of work, you're like, okay, maybe the label ace was donned or put on them too quickly. So I totally get that, and I want to see another year too. But you're right. Like, he is performing as an ace right now.
All right, then let's reframe this question a little bit. And I appreciate the pushback. Let's pump the brakes on it a touch. Is he the best pitcher the Blue Jays organization has had since Roy Halladay? Or are we in love with rose-colored glasses of our memories of Marcus Stroman? Or
I was just going to say, you know what, Marcus Stroman, I know there's a lot of the fan base that doesn't truly...
I mean, the relationship ended on a bad note, but he was pitching very well for this team at that point.
I mean, he did come back from injury in 2015 and was the man in the playoffs. He pitched incredibly well in 2016. Another one of the reasons that they went back to the ALCS that year. I don't know. I think it's too early to say that he's the best pitcher since Roy Halladay. How do you feel, Jen?
I agree.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree.
Well, then let's talk contract for Alek Manoah before we move on here in this phenomenal season he's had. The Jays waited too long to get any sort of a discount on Vlad and Bo. Is it already too late to get any sort of a discount on Alek Manoah? Should they pay him like an ace pitcher? Or is this a similar situation now where we just got to ride out the ARB years and we're like 4 or 5 years away from even considering an extension with Manoah?
I think it's too early. Like, he's a free agent in 2028. There is 6 years here. We can give it another year or two before we start talking contract extension. Personally, I mean,
right.
I would much rather see them extend Matt Chapman than.
Well, hey, look, only reason I bring it up is because, I mean, everybody likes to point to what Alex Anthopoulos, the man, as a lot of Blue Jays fans consider him, what he's doing down in Atlanta. And you can't get those kind of deals if you're waiting 6 more years on your top guys, right? So I don't know what the right answer is. Clearly, I am not equipped to be a general manager, but it is at some point, I don't know, like if you want a deal, you got to go and take a little bit of risk, right? But those are also deals that bite you in the butt.
Well, I mean, if you look at what the Tampa Bay Rays have done with guys like Wander Franco, I mean, it could work out, but I don't know. Pitchers are different. Pitchers, actually, it's funny. Christopher Oliver just dropped in chat right here. Pitchers are so fragile. We have a long time before we have to worry about Manoah's contract. I would offer him a fair and equitable increase, but not top dollar. And that's probably what this organization is going to do if we look back on how they have operated in the past.
Yeah, and it's up to Manoah as well to weigh his options. It's risky on his side as well, right? Do you risk, pitching, literally being an ace and missing out on money? Or do you lock yourself in because of the potential of injury and you take the money when it's being offered, right? I would be interested. I'd love to just, even just listen to the mindset of different individuals and how they went about this process, right? Those who signed the deals, those who did not. It would be really, really interesting from what we see of Manoah's personality. I would imagine he would want to wait and see.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Bet on himself, so to speak, all that jazz.
All these youngsters betting on themselves. I wish them all the best. I really do. I just hope we can keep some talent on this team. All right. Anything else to add on Alek Manoah before we move on? No, we're good. Jen?
I think we're good. I think we all, I mean, there's only positive things to say about him at this point. I know, I really, really do hope that having hit, what is he at? 190 innings, I believe he's at.
Yeah.
I'm really
only 0.1 behind.
Yes.
Behind Alvarez, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, really just hoping that, that he can keep going, because I don't know how many playoff games this team is going to have ahead of him, but I really, really do hope that there's no wall.
One thing before we move on, I will just drop a couple more stats here. Manoah's road ERA since joining this Toronto Blue Jays rotation is 2.07, and his AL East ERA is 2.12. So, big game guy.
Yep.
Big game guy. All right. Speaking of big game guys, my notes here say Whit Merrifield, the Rays Slayer / King of the Trop. Scott, you put this in my notes. I didn't catch today's game. I was at hockey evaluations, being a good dad. Explain this one to me.
Well, he didn't show up today, the
Okay.
king of the Trop here.
Okay.
But the last,
I looked and I'm like, 0 for 4. I must have missed something.
yeah, no, well, I mean,
Defensive highlight or something.
he put together a really good series, especially if you take a look at how he's performed since joining this Blue Jays team. He really showed up, and he got to play all of the games because of that. You know, couple home runs, couple big hits, few RBIs. Yeah.
3 home runs this series in 4 games.
3 home runs this series.
There you go. Anything else to add on Whit Merrifield?
I mean, good for him for having a good series against a team that, you know, is notorious.
It's tough to have a good series again.
Yeah, like good for him. I mean, to me, he's still completely superfluous on this team. So I'm not entirely sure exactly why they picked him up, but the fact that they haven't used him very much is sort of evidence that maybe they're not even sure why they picked him up. Right. And, you know, and it's hard because we are, you know, as a fan base saying, you know, well, his numbers have been terrible, this or that, blah, 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 blah. But it is difficult to go from playing every day to not. You know, like that's not his fault if he was picked up by a team that isn't really entirely sure how to use him.
And this organization has done this a few times throughout the past years, right? It felt like a trying to catch lightning in a bottle type of scenario with Whit Merrifield. You know, like you look at his past numbers and what he did last year, and you're like, you know, he struggled in Kansas City this season. Maybe a change in scenery. We see old Whit come back and drive the offense and get on base at the top of the order, you know, like slot him into that number 5 spot or wherever in the lineup, or even hit him at the back end of the lineup to have guys on base for the Springers and Vladys of this team. It just didn't really work out that way. It felt like a little bit like the Kikuchi thing, right? Where they're like, maybe we can fix him.
Yeah, I don't really know still how I feel about Whit Merrifield. I mean, this is a guy who is a speed guy, right? Like he's led the he's led the league in stolen bases 3 different times in his career, but he is 33, almost 34 now. Is it a factor of like maybe he's losing a step as he's getting older? I don't know. Like, I mean,
he was a late bloomer.
At face value, I want to say, look, this is a guy that, you know, we're talking playoff baseball, maybe a pinch running situation late in a game where you got to get, you know, manufacturing with your runs. Like, who's he really pinch running for in a stay in the game situation, right? Like, he's not pinch running for Bo Bichette. He's not pinch running for Kevin Biggio.
Maybe Kirk late in a game?
Yeah, but then he's not going catcher. Like if he's pinch running for Kirk, then he's out of the game. Right? I don't know. It's just it is a weird spot to be in. All right. I don't have anything else to add about Whit Merrifield unless anybody else does, and we're going to get to Matt Chapman here in a sec. Okay, on to Matt Chapman then. Point blank, has he worked out to your expectations? Jen, you're nodding along already, so let's start with you then. Matt Chapman, how are you feeling about Matt Chapman?
I mean, if you take a look at his numbers and what he was projected to put up at the start of the season, he has essentially matched or surpassed all of those numbers. So absolutely, he's done at least what I expected. But you know, the defense, as we all know, is key. That's the entire reason why they signed him, right? And he definitely has made a difference at third base in comparison to, you know, who they had out there in the past few years. But his offense, especially the home runs, have been a pleasant surprise, I think.
I would agree with that. I think he's got a good enough on base percentage. I think it's right around 330. He's hitting 230 or 235, something like that. You know, like his offense has been as projected or better, just like you said, Jen.
Yeah.
And his defense has been incredible. Personally, I want to see this front office lock him up for the next 4 years. He's 30 years old. I think he fits well with this team. Everyone in the core seems to really like him. You look at the farm system, and there's no, especially after moving Groshans, there's no real third baseman pushing up the ranks right now. I mean, Aurelvis Martinez is turning heads in Double-A, but there's a lot of swing and miss there, and the kid's still just 20. I think we're still a lot further than just 2023 away from Aurelvis being a legitimate option at third base. And I would love to be wrong about that. I think everyone who would project him as not ready would love to eat it. You know, we're all Jays fans here, but, you know, just looking at a 20-year-old kid, how often do they pan out, right? I know we're a little spoiled here in Blue Jays country with Vlad and Bo and the likes of that and Kirk and stuff. But, I mean, yeah, I want to see Matt Chapman extended. More than anyone on this team, I want to see Matt Chapman extended.
Yeah, I think it's too important of a position to throw a young guy out there before he's ready, obviously, right? Especially if this is a team that is going to be in contention the next X number of years. And Chapman, you know, as you said, like everybody speaks very, very highly of him, it seems, you know, so he brings that leadership role as well. You know, I'm sure that he has been mentoring Bo, and, you know, just those intangibles that he can bring, in addition to the fact that he is playing solid defense and putting up decent enough offensive numbers. Really, what more can you ask for? Like, that is a position that they have to look at long term, right? For now.
And there are options, right? I know they just brought up, Dultramaris brought up Addison Barger, who is a lefty. He just got promoted to AAA. But again, he is more of I think Barger's 25. He has been very good in the minor league system for the Blue Jays. But we've seen it time and time again. It's a pretty big jump from
Addison Barger
AAA.
is going to be 23 in 2 months.
23, sorry. Okay, so he's a little younger than I thought he was. Thanks for looking that up, Adam.
Before we
but you can't put, to me, it's just too important of a position. Like, you can't put that on a young guy who isn't proven, right? Because then what is your next option if that doesn't work out, right? So you need somebody who, you know, is the guy, right? With then the intent perhaps of bringing up one of the younger guys as a backup or something of that, or in case of injury.
And I'm not even saying sign him to, I mean, obviously he isn't the type of player you're going to need to give 5, 6, 7 years to.
No.
But I think a 4-year deal for, you know, 16 to 20 million a year, I think is something you could absolutely lock him up for, right? Kyle Schwarber type of money. You know, I don't know. Like, I just don't see anyone from the system being that guy unless they force their way in. And I would rather see them force their way into this type of scenario, right? Like talking Addison Barger, let's say, knock on all the wood, Chapman has a bad taco, right? And then they bring him up and he just excels. That's the type of scenario where I'd like to see what some of these young prospects that aren't proven be given an opportunity, right? To put on a play, this team's a playoff contender. Everyone in this organization's goal is a World Series. We're in that window right now. And I don't wish to see some 23-year-old who's unproven, no disrespect meant to Barger or anyone in this Jays system, be thrust into that situation without a backup plan. They should be the backup plan. I don't know if either of you feel differently.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Scott. And, I mean, Matt Chapman has had slow start to the year. I think skews the numbers as he, you know, obviously adjusting to life in Toronto. He was I believe, late in the offseason trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So getting his feet wet, comfortable in Toronto. But like his numbers since June 1st, he's hitting .251 with a slugging percentage of .500, an OPS of .844. He's on a 35 home run pace since June 1st, you know?
And he should hit 30 this year. He might not quite hit there, but he should hit 30.
Yeah, he's at 27 right now, 9 games to go. if some bounces go his way, 30s for sure within reach. I mean, 28 or 29.
Yeah.
If we're getting pushing 30 home runs and 90 RBIs out of our number 6 hitter and platinum glove winner, I'm thrilled with that. And I don't think he's going to cost too much, like relative to what he's bringing to the table. He's not Jose Ramirez, and he's not going to get paid as such. But
you could probably, somewhere in that 4 years, $60 to $70 million range, I think is pretty reasonable.
Unless the Rangers feel spendy. Addison Barger, yeah. I mean, never really was on the radar until recently. Martinez, like you said, probably a ways away. And third base is just too important of a position to hand over to a 22-year-old when you're in a playoff window anyways, right?
Like Chris Weaver in chat here kind of hits the nail on the head. He says, I mean, the fact that they keep calling up Otto Lopez and have never used him tells us how they feel about their AAA guys. That's a very good point.
That is a good point. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on from there. If nobody has anything else to add on Chapman, let's talk. Speaking of call-ups, Blue Jays playoff roster predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just start with catcher. Are we going to carry 3 catchers? Feels like they kind of have to, right? Gabriel Moreno. No, Jen doesn't think so. You think that? Well, okay. What's your thinking, Jen?
I don't know why they would carry 3, to be completely honest. Like how much game time has Moreno seen since he was called up?
Why?
Right. So
yeah,
to be honest, I'm not even sure why he was called up when he could be playing every day, continuing to get reps, other than being around the atmosphere and some of the veterans. I'm not entirely sure why he's there.
I think
unless
that's
they
it.
want him to, unless they want him to be talking to Jansen and Kirk, so in case he does have to catch in the playoffs. But then I really think, what are we doing if we're starting a guy or we're putting a guy out there who hasn't been playing?
And the only reason I can see Moreno being on this playoff roster is they're going to be DH and Kirk constantly throughout this. So if you are going to remove, let's say, Danny Jansen from a scenario, at least you have someone who can catch in a game. But other than that, I don't see why you would roll with 3 catchers.
That's it though, is with Kirk DHing, bad taco for Jansen. We can't take Kirk out of the DH and stick him back there. It's just, I mean, a very risky proposition to have no backup catcher for a multitude of reasons. As far as the, what is Kirk really doing with this team? If they're not going to use him, I mean, yeah, he hasn't played in a while. That's definitely concerning.
Moreno,
but
yes.
What did I say?
You say Kirk,
that's okay. We know what
Moreno. You know what I meant, Moreno. But I do think that there's real understated value to just being part of the atmosphere, right? As opposed to getting called up.
I guess the big question is, can they better utilize that spot on the roster?
So what I was actually going to ask, when it comes to the DH position, are you in favor of having a guy who is essentially your full-time DH, or would you prefer it to be a position that you are continuously rotating guys through? How would you ideally want a DH spot to be used?
I would like to see the DH spot used as it was maybe a little bit more last year, where it's kind of used as that rest day for everyone and cycled through a little bit more. That full-time DH spot, it always winds up getting you into trouble whenever there's something. I mean, we've watched it happen time and time again with Springer and Kirk, right? They both require so much time at DH that anytime there's guys are not getting in the lineup because of it at times, and it's just kind of frustrating to watch. I know that just right here, Christopher Oliver says we need a third catcher on the roster if both catchers are in the starting lineup on a daily basis, and maybe that is the case. I don't know.
I would say back to Moreno not getting the playing time right now too. I think my preference would be to have a guy who he's not going to forget how to play. I don't think he's going to be rusty in the time that he has had off, but I do think that there is a more significant impact in being around this atmosphere and this 45,000 people in the Rogers Center. And kind of just getting acclimated to that kind of an atmosphere, whether you're in the game or not, right? Just hearing the Rogers Center, it's going to be nuts when the Yankees are in town this week. And even when playing the Red Sox, I know the Red Sox are not much this year, but that's going to be the last home series of the season on a weekend in Toronto. That's going to be a sellout crowd. I don't think that you're necessarily better off just playing in AAA, getting your everyday reps, and then walking into that October 10th.
I mean, the AAA season's wrapping up right away if it hasn't already, right? Isn't it?
It's still going.
It's still going.
I think they're in playoffs or something right now, but yeah, Nate Pearson just pitched yesterday. So
Jen,
AAA season ends Wednesday, Chris Oliver says.
Okay, I'm curious, Jen, what you think, because I know Christopher Oliver just brought this up here, but for the designated hitter spot, come the playoffs, because what he says is rotating during season, rigid during postseason. I kind of agree with that. How do you feel about that? Kirk should be getting every at bat he can, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's just, and it's unfortunate because you want Kirk in there as much as possible. And I would say that's during the season as well as in the postseason, right? That's the issue. But then they've got guys, George, who need that DH spot often enough that it either pushes Kirk out of the lineup or it pushes Jansen out of the lineup and Kirk is catching, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just the bit of difficulty, and it's roster construction.
It is,
right? That's what it all boils down to, is how the roster has been constructed. So that's my only concern. I do agree, though, theoretically, right? Rotating during the season and rigid in the postseason.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the best option of our lineup looks like George Springer playing center field, Danny Jansen catching, and Alejandro Kirk catching, right? Is that
DHing? Yeah.
Other than, I'm a fucking useless kid today, aren't I? Oh man. I mean, other than Manoah starts, I guess Manoah starts, you get Kirk catching for sure. Springer maybe takes the DH and Jansen gets the day off. Is that
probably how you would do it? Yeah.
How
have
she works?
Biggio in there, or maybe if there's a lefty on the mound, whatever, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like Jen said, it's the roster construction, and this. I don't want to harp on this too much because we've spoken about this ad nauseum. But this is the predicament the Jays find themselves in, and why catching needs to be addressed this offseason. We just spoke with Mitch Bannon last week, and he doesn't think any of the three catchers get moved this offseason. I just don't know how you keep going into a season where Springer's going to be a year older. He's going to need more DH than he needed this year. This is a problem that's not going to get better unless Alejandro Kirk, loses weight and can be a catcher 135 games a year.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got the same predicament with Danny Jansen. Danny Jansen had a great hitting season this year. Injuries plagued him, but
you can tell even the organization doesn't know exactly what they want to do with Moreno. I mean, we saw him getting reps playing center field. We watched him in the minor leagues get a few times at third base. They obviously want to figure out where they can put him, because he is sort of blocked right now at catcher unless they do something.
And that's one of, I guess we've talked ad nauseum about what holes they have to address this offseason, right? So if they can do that through free agency, then they keep their 3 catchers. But if they can't do it free agency and they have to look at the trade market either going into the season or at the trade deadline, that's where I think you could lose one of the 3.
I agree.
All right, let's talk outfielding then. We got a lot of outfielders on this team. Let's go down the list. We got Springer, obviously. We got Teoscar. We got Lourdes, who I think is still on the IL, but should be coming back probably before the end of the season.
So those 3 are locks. Those 3 are on the roster for sure.
Yes. Then we got Tapia. Tapia is probably
a lock.
Our number 4 outfielder. But beyond that, we got Bradley and we got Zimmer. Are we taking both of them? Do they both have value in a situation where, I don't know. It seems like a lot. 6 outfielders seems like a lot.
I would go with Bradley Jr. over Zimmer, because what is Zimmer's value? Really, his is base running as well, would it not be? So if you have Whit Merrifield to do that, then you don't really need Zimmer. That's what I would think. Yeah, and Bradley's made some pretty good catches.
Yes, he has. He's looked really good in the outfield.
Bradley Jr.
And he's come up with some big hits, too.
He has.
Surprising situations, more so. I mean, I trust Bradley at the plate far more than I do Zimmer, although Zimmer is much faster. We saw that when they put him into pinch run there, and he went first to home in like a ridiculous time. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they do carry 6 outfielders, though. I know, again, not to bring it, not harp on what he was saying, but Mitch Bannon with Sports Illustrated also felt like they probably bring all 6 of them on the playoff roster. Again, I just question, can you utilize that 6th outfield spot better? I don't know.
I mean, I'd give the 6th outfield spot to Kevin Biggio. You know?
Yeah, right? Like, that's the thing. Biggio can also play outfield.
So, I mean, like, if we're talking, like, in a pinch and we had to make a bunch of weird roster moves in the 4th inning to make a thing and manufacture a run, and now we find ourselves in a predicament. Like, he could play any.
Whit Merrifield can play the outfield.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't need Zimmer, that's for sure.
Another advantage of JBJ over Zimmer, as Dulcimus points out here, Jackie Bradley Jr. has a World Series ring. So, just in terms of like playoff experience, there is real value there. Everyone in the live chat here saying Biggio and Whit can play outfield as well. So,
like, they've literally got 8 outfielders on this 40-man roster right now, or like 8 viable options, which is crazy.
Big time.
That's a bullpen.
That's a bullpen.
They've got a bullpen of outfielders.
There you go. Beautiful. All right. Speaking of bullpen, then let's just end with this on the Blue Jays playoff roster predictions. Yusei Kikuchi, is he on this playoff roster? Jen, I want your thoughts, because when Scott and I talked to Mitch Bannon, he seemed adamant that he's got a role. Sometimes it's a ugly game early, and you just need someone who can go out there and throw 85 pitches.
I
save
agree
your bullpen
with
for
Mitch.
Tomorrow.
Unfortunately, I do.
It doesn't feel good to say, but it's true, right?
He offered. We all know that he offered to go to AAA and work on stuff. They kept him on the big league roster and found ways to utilize him. A lot of the times that has been ugly, right? But I think that they did that. I think they've paid him his money. I think they kept him with the big league team. I think they've worked with him. And I do think that they see that as being his role, right? And I don't really know. I'm not saying that he should be on the roster, on the playoff roster. I'm not saying that he should be. I'm not saying that he's earned a spot, right? Please don't mistake me for saying that. Like, I'm not suggesting that. However, I do think that he has a role. I think that the team sees him as having a role.
I don't like it either, but I also think that Kikuchi is going to be on this roster. I think Kikuchi will be on the roster over Mitch White, personally. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'd rather have Mitch White.
I
Mitch
think
White
I would too,
feels
but
less flammable. I think Kikuchi can throw more innings if you need him to, but I don't know. Ugh,
God,
it's
it feels
gross. It's gross
disgusting
to even
even
think
say
about.
this. I know.
I need a shower. All right.
Yeah, you know what, and this is the problem, right? Is because you do have to have a guy like him who can kind of mop up innings if you need, right? I said it last week, I'll say it again. I remember that R.A. Dickey start in whatever the hell year it was. I believe it was 2016. And I mean, it was just abysmal.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know that you can't trust Kikuchi out there, but there might be a game where him eating innings is better than absolutely blowing through every guy in your bullpen.
Yeah, I mean,
The exact way Mitch Bannon put it was, if we wind up giving up 100 runs, like he literally said 100 runs, you need someone who can go out there and eat innings for the bullpen.
can Kevin Biggio not throw 60 pitches? Like,
He does everything else. You would think he could.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to backtrack just a touch here. Chris Weaver in the chat says, Whit Merrifield be at second base. Doubt SB is back at all this year. So that is something to keep in mind. Espinal placed on the IL with a left oblique strain. Oblique's one of those weird, like, no timetable for return kind of injuries, right? Like it either gets better or it nags at you. So Espinal's really had a kind of a quiet second half to the season, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Weaver brings up a great point about Kikuchi, and he's like, it would not be a trust situation. He is put out there when the game is already lost and you need to save arms for the next game. So that's exactly why they would.
Yeah, it's that, or it's they're up by 10, right?
Yeah.
As well, right?
Yeah.
Either way, it's not a trust thing, but you need him out there so that you're not using bullpen guys that you need the next day.
So Adam and I were texting about something 2 days ago, and I'm really curious on your thoughts, Jen. How are you feeling about our lone lefty in the pen, Tim Meza?
Feeling about him in what way? Like in terms of
where is your trust level with him right now?
Yeah.
Medium leverage, right?
Like, yeah, I was going to say it wavers. It wavers. I'm not, the trust is not high. And again, yeah, you hold your breath a little bit when he comes out, I think. So yeah, I would agree. He is not somebody you want coming out in a one-run game. Go ahead.
No, I only bring it up because I wanted to really quickly talk about Matt Gage, who is obviously a guy that this organization doesn't have trust in. That's the only explanation I have for why he has not been brought back up on this team. I know that his numbers with Buffalo have been excellent this season. Okay, he's had 40 games. He's got an ERA of 2.45. He's got a whip of 1.1. He's got 12 out of 12 saves. He's got 45 strikeouts. His numbers when he was up with the Jays in 11 games, he pitched 13 innings at a 1.38 ERA and a whip under 1. I really do like Tim Meza, and I do trust him probably over Matt Gage, but it is weird to kind of see this guy do so well in AAA and it's not like there's a bunch of lefties waiting to blocking him. You know what I mean?
There has to be a reason, right?
There has to be a reason.
All right, I just want to jump in
that we're not seeing.
I just want to jump in with some Tim Meza stats, okay? Because the last two outings were ugly, and this, I think, is the reason for concern, right? But if we look beyond these two most recent appearances, the 8 games prior to that, 6 2/3 innings, 0 earned runs, two hits and 1 walk. So he's got a whip of like 0.4 over the last 8 games if you take out the last 2 like ugly situations. So most of September he has been lights out.
Mm-hmm.
Is this just recency bias? Like, am I panicking over nothing? Is this just a blip on the radar?
It is possible it's recency bias. I mean, it's interesting here. I know the chat's kind of going back and forth about Gage and Meza, and I know Chris Weaver says here there's not really anyone in the pen right now that I cringe when they come in. It's been solid for a while. That's a good point. It has been fairly solid. I mean, I think we all cringe a little bit. Yeah, J-Mesh was just like, well,
for Kikuchi.
of course, yeah. And I think Chris Weaver would agree with that. Everyone was kind of getting in there with the Kikuchi stuff. But it's just really interesting to watch a guy succeed so much, especially at 29 years old after being a journeyman for so long, and figure it out and get the opportunity to come up to the big leagues and still do well and then not be given more opportunity. It just makes me curious, like, what am I missing? Like, what does the organization know that I obviously can't see?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Matt Gage because he did not pitch poorly at the MLB level when he came up. Like, he was pitching
No, he didn't.
serviceably fine and then got kind of sent down for, like, seemed like roster management
Yeah.
reasons, got optioned back down to AAA. But I have been surprised to not see him called back up at any point this season.
Do you think there's a spot on this team for him when the AAA season goes? Or, I mean, they obviously don't trust him enough to be on a playoff roster?
I don't know. Would you rather have Matt Gage or he who shall not be named, Nate Pearson? Nate Pearson. Okay, let's talk Nate Pearson for a second, then we can move on from this. Nate Pearson had a rough outing yesterday. And I know I'm going to get comments here from Chris Oliver in the chat. He has very strong opinions on Nate Pearson. Nate Pearson's actually like pitched pretty well this year in AAA. Scott, I was texting you the stats on him. Let me just see if I can find these quickly. So other than yesterday's bad outing, in AAA this year, 9 games, 11 innings pitched, 17 Ks. That's like 14 Ks per 9 and a whip of 0.818. That's pretty good for Nate Pearson. I mean, 9 games is a reasonable sample size, coming out of the bullpen.
I know I was reading, too, that his velo is back not to quite where it was last year, but he's hitting 98, 99 on a regular basis.
Do you want to see him?
No, I don't want to see him. Absolutely
We've been here
not.
before with him where we were talking about him rehabbing injury, right? And looking really, really good. And look at his velo. And,
Look,
will he play a role? Oh my goodness, he'll be our secret weapon coming out of the bullpen. And it didn't pan out.
I don't want to say he's going to be our secret weapon. I know that has been the catchy way to put it for the last, 12 years, it feels like. But like, it would be nice to have a guy in the bullpen who could just bring some heat, right? Like, instead of a gadget guy.
It would be nice to have a guy in the bullpen who can bring some heat if he can actually perform. We haven't seen it. And this is not a one-off at this point, right? This has been several seasons of utter disappointment and for multiple different reasons. I can't say yes to Pearson. I just can't.
I know it's hard to do.
I will forever remember that interview that they had with Nate Pearson on MLB Network before he made his debut with the Blue Jays, where they were talking with him about being a Hall of Fame pitcher. And I remember listening to that and being like, well, this is going to screw with his head. Like,
jeez. And you thought our Alek Manoah, is he an ace talk was premature, right? Lordy. All right, Nate Pearson, I just want to say I want to see him pitch in the MLB this week. If not, I don't want his first MLB outing this year to be in a playoff situation. We have 9 games left.
Absolutely not.
And that's my
I thought
strongest
we would have
opinion.
seen him before now, to be completely honest.
So did I.
Right? Just the way we were getting updates, which frankly, I sort of begrudgingly tweeted about that I didn't want to hear any updates unless he was actually getting called up. Mm-hmm. And I still essentially feel that way. Right. But when talk of Pearson was kind of ramping up, I thought, okay, a week or two, if they call him up, we'll see what he's got. But here we are, and it's what, September 25th?
25th today.
And we're still not at that point. So I don't think there's anything to be excited about there.
With 9 games left, I want nothing to do with Nate Pearson.
No.
Like, maybe if this was July or August, do it. But right now, especially with how the Pen's performing, I don't think they need him.
Nope. I agree with you. I don't think they've gone through the season without him.
And I'm not writing Nate Pearson off. I still think Nate Pearson very well could have a very good MLB career as a high leverage reliever in the back end of a bullpen somewhere. But I don't want to see it this year.
I wish they had traded him when he had value.
I just want to clarify. I'm not advocating for Nate Pearson, but I don't think I don't think that closing the book on, like, I would not be surprised if we do see him in a Blue Jays uniform this season.
I think it would need to be an injury. Like, I can't imagine who would lose their spot for Nate Pearson at this point. Here Chris Weaver's talking up too. He's like, at Scott Belford, who would lose their spot for the Pen? Well, nobody.
You say Kikuchi. I don't know. Stick Nate Pearson out there to mop up innings. What do I care? I don't know. He's not going away. I feel like
this
if
is a 2023. This is a 2023 thing. I think
he's not going away, but our hopes for him can go away.
Yeah.
Look, if he was not part of the Blue Jays plans for this year, I don't think we would have seen a Sportsnet interview with him where they were talking about him contributing to this team in October. I think Sportsnet is a Toronto Blue Jays media company. They're getting their messaging out. Maybe I'm too conspiratorial on that, but it feels like if they didn't want anything to do with Nate Pearson this year and we're happy to just have him ride the season out as a rehab year and we'll try again next year, I don't think they would have strutted him out there like that for something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm just saying we should brace for Nate Pearson. Fingers crossed, but I would rather see him pitch in Boston in a low leverage situation rather than in the 5th inning of a Jose Barrios start in Seattle. So
noted.
All right. Noted. All right. I think that's
we're doing it, chat. We're moving on.
We're moving on. Yes, I know.
Everyone's like, enough Nate Pearson talk.
Nate Pearson. 2 minutes is enough on Nate. All right. Happier, meadowier skies. Albert Pujols, welcome to the 700 Club. Incredible. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I was reading the story last night of everything about Albert Pujols, and I was like literally tearing up. I was getting teary-eyed. This is the romance of baseball, like coming through. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I don't think anybody has a single bad thing to say about Albert Pujols. If they do, I'm not listening to it. I mean, most of the first half of this season was us saying, like, look, if he hits 14 or 15 home runs this year, he has to come back next year, right? didn't need it. He legitimately
just
put
so
up a
cool.
20 home run season.
Yeah,
for the 18th
it's so cool
time
to
in his
see
career. This is amazing.
him not limp across the finish line.
Totally.
Yeah, and how often do you see that in professional sports, right? So
You don't.
many greats just stay at the dance just one song too long, you know? And he's going out on the highest note possible, and it's incredible. And like you said, he is I've never heard a bad word about the man. Never ever. And that's just, you know, I don't think that there's a single person in baseball who isn't over the moon over this accomplishment and him being the one to accomplish it. The only two things I'd like to say about it that are sort of just separate from the accomplishment itself. What a shame that it was on Apple TV, first of all.
Yeah.
You know, just the irony of it almost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you know, Major League Baseball has had these three, if you include Shohei Ohtani, but they've had these two incredible storylines going on, right? They've had the Albert Pujols chase for 700, and they have Aaron Judge and his awesomeness and what he's doing. And I don't know if it's just being in a Canadian market, but I don't see any evidence of them really leveraging those two scenarios and marketing the hell out of it. Like, why would you not be using quite literally record-breaking seasons to market, like purchasing MLB TV for the final 2 weeks or something like that? Right?
Absolutely.
I can't believe that from what I've seen anyways, Major League Baseball has not leveraged these historical seasons in some sort of marketing fashion.
And Jen, I really like that you brought up, like, how often do you see a player go out like this? You know, like, it's just in sport in general. Forget about just baseball. Band of Gold in YouTube here brings up David Ortiz. David Ortiz had a final or a solid final year, but like, it doesn't happen very often, right? Like, normally it is very much so a decline, and you know, you respect the guy for what he did in his prime. But my goodness, like, this year is incredible. And another thing I wanted to really quickly touch on Pujols, because of course he broke the record and all of these cool and crazy stats and little bits of tidbits about him came out. But Albert, and I didn't know this, but Albert Pujols was selected in the 13th round. Like, he was taken 402nd overall in 1999. He played at community college. Like, he didn't even play in a top division or Division II college. Like, you know, like, it's absolutely insane that this man, who really wasn't highly touted as a prospect, hit 700 home runs, is a top 4 power hitter of all time. It's unbelievable.
An incredible second half from Albert Pujols. Really poured on the coals. I mean, 4 home runs through April, May, and June. Like, the first half, second half splits for Albert Pujols are incredible. Batting average.
That home run derby turned his whole season
It did. Like, he was hitting 215 in the first half of the season with 6 home runs. Second half of the season, 15 home runs. He's hitting 317.
I remember saying we were talking about who we wanted included in the home run derby, and I said Albert Pujols, and I said it more as like the farewell tour, right?
Yeah, tip
like
of the
let
hat.
him go out in style, let him be on that all-star field one final time, and you know, whatever, do your thing. I never would have guessed that he would have then come out of that all-star break and done what he's done, but
that is one thing. Speaking of the All-Star game, one thing baseball has done right is implementing that, like, legends spot on the rosters.
Yeah.
Having Miggy Cabrera and Albert Pujols there at the All-Star game. Hope that's something that continues moving forward. And why not? But yeah, Albert Pujols, everything about him, awesome. 700th home run ball. The fan that caught the ball is keeping it.
Very cool.
Very cool. I just wanted your guys' thoughts on that. Albert Pujols says he's not going to try and get the 700th ball for himself. He says souvenirs are for the fans. And again,
he won't pay for them, right? Like that's just not his thing.
no, and what would you do though if you were the fan that caught the 700th ball? Would you rather the $1 million payday or the
I honestly
souvenir
would like
memory for life?
I say this being the fan who didn't catch it. So I don't know how I would feel if I actually had that piece of memorabilia sitting in my hand. Like, I honestly think I would exchange the ball strictly for, a handshake and me being able to say to him, congratulations. Like, I honestly think that that's all I would want. And I don't know if he would go for that. Like, and it doesn't matter. That's irrelevant, right? I wouldn't want $1 million. I wouldn't want money for it.
I would take $1 million.
I would take the $1 million.
Well, he ain't giving it to you, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
whatever
Someone would.
Yeah, I don't know. A ball up on my
Don't get me
mantle.
wrong. I love the fans keeping it. I think that that's
Absolutely.
incredible. I just I don't know how I could just have $1 million just next to a couple bobbleheads on my I don't know.
It is a lot of money. Speaking of money, we're going to pivot from Albert Pujols to Aaron Judge. There is a ball bounty for these final Aaron Judge home runs of the year. I don't know if you guys saw this. This is the Phil and Corey's Sports World Collectibles has put a $250,000 bounty on the Aaron Judge home run ball number 61, a $500,000 bounty on the home run ball number 62, and a $1.2 million bounty on the final home run of the season, whichever number that may be. Is that too much money? Like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, of course.
The concern is people, the fights or the potential for a fight in the stands. And then you've got that asshole Zach Hempel out there, practically throwing children onto the field in order to catch the ball himself. And so I feel like that's just, I feel like that's setting up potential dangerous mayhem.
The chat's with you here, Jen. I know Dalton says someone is going to get hurt in the scramble for the ball without a doubt.
Yeah,
And,
I'm not a fan of that. I think that that's just a terrible, terrible idea. And I don't know how you prevent somebody from doing that, mind you. Like, I don't know how you prevent a company from offering up that money.
I mean, it was getting scary even watching Pujols 699. I don't know if you saw that, but it was pretty wild in those Dodgers stands out in the outfield. And I mean, it could have been total chaos. The guy literally caught it for the 700. Boom, caught it flat, right in the glove. But if the ball's bouncing around, again, that's $1 million. I know it. Even if it's the $250,000 you were talking about there, Adam, somebody's gonna get crazy over that.
Okay. Blue Jays schedule here. The Yankees are coming to town.
Yippers.
He's at 60 right now.
Yeah, we could see it in Toronto. I don't want to.
How much money
to be honest.
How much money does an outfield ticket go for in Toronto right now?
That's a good question. Are you looking it up right now?
No, I'm not. I'm just doing the math on what's $500,000 divided by the price of a ticket. What if I bought every outfield ticket?
You know what? Let me just
corner the market.
I'm going to go on SeatGeek right now and just check if it is crazy.
You got to look at where he hits his home runs in Skydome and then pick those optimal rows.
Just hypothetically, if I was a Elon Musk and I was a big baseball fan and I just thought, yeah, I could manipulate this, buy up every single seat in the outfield. I mean,
so the outfield right now for seats that would normally go for $30-$40, $130. So yeah, people are paying.
Okay, so you could get about 4,000 seats for $500,000. That's not enough to guarantee that you get the ball. So never mind. That is not a good investment. Anybody who's listening and thinking about putting 500 grand down on outfield tickets in Toronto, maybe just hold off for.
Am I the only one who would love to see him do it in Toronto? Just for the history of it.
I
You know,
would not.
if someone's going to witness it, I'd rather it be Toronto fans, I guess.
I get that
Nope.
sentiment.
I want to walk him 12 times.
Okay, all right. Aside from that, I don't know. The Yankees are winning the division.
They are.
Right.
It's true.
That's a done deal. So, if at that point, then I don't know. I just think it would be kind of cool if he did it here.
All right. Speaking of the Yankees winning the division, that being a done deal. This is crazy, but Seattle Mariners haven't clinched a playoff spot yet. Could the Orioles catch them?
No.
4 games back, 9 games remaining. Scott's just saying no. Or Mariners are playing poorly.
I don't see them.
I know that schedule's soft, but I'm going to just pull up the Mariners schedule here. So the remaining games for Seattle, 3 versus Texas, 3 versus Oakland, 4 versus Detroit. That's really soft, but so have the last couple series. 3 against the Angels, they lost 3 out of 4. 3 against the Athletics, they lost 2 out of 3. The Kansas City Royals, they lost 2 out of 3. Not crazy.
I mean, if anyone can have a complete collapse and miss the playoffs, it's the Seattle Mariners. But
Oh, man,
I
you
can't see
imagine?
it happening.
No.
Oh, wouldn't that be a weird final game of the season where Toronto can just like throw a game to Baltimore and the Mariners miss the playoffs?
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Oh, I don't even want to
So
get
there
into
would be
that.
starting Kikuchi.
Hey,
then
there's the role
put
for
Kikuchi.
Kikuchi.
There you go.
That's right.
Yeah, totally.
Resting Manoah, resting the bullpen. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk briefly Aaron Judge in more detail. He is in the midst of a triple crown bid. Did I say that word right? Triple? You ever say a word too many times and it just stops making sense? That's where I'm at. Aaron Judge has a big lead in home runs, if you're not aware, in the American League. Sizable lead won't be caught in RBIs. I think he's up 11 on Jose Ramirez. And batting average, as of today, he's 1 point back of Xander Bogaerts. Pretty wild. Jen, is he your MVP this year?
Yeah, I think you got to give it to him. I do. I don't think. I mean, I can make an argument in either direction, whether it be for Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani, and we all know what the arguments would be for either one of them. I think you got to give it to Judge. I think this season.
I'm biased, and I think you're right.
Yeah, it's a historic season. It is, one of the best offensive seasons, certainly that we've ever seen. And, as we discussed last week, the Yankees are winning the division, right?
Yeah.
Like his contributions to that have been enormous. So I'm not really sure how you can't give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say last year I had very strong feelings that Vlady should have won the MVP, and I still do. And Aaron Judge is going to hit 15 extra home runs over what Vlady did last year, as well as threaten for a triple crown. So after Vlady lost it, though, I tried to reason with myself and talk myself into why Shohei Ohtani deserved it and the value of having 2 players on your team, essentially. That was where I found sleep at night after that heartbreak last year. This year I realized Shohei Ohtani pitches in a 6-man rotation. So for me, that is a deal breaker. I don't know how either of you feel about this, but
Well, we've talked about this, Adam. I really feel that this has a lot more to do with the Angels organization than Shohei Ohtani and his need for rest. I think that every organization kind of operates differently with how they throw their pitchers out there and the rest they give and all of that sort of stuff. But
even with it being a 6-man rotation, he's still doing something that
is
I don't think that no one else can do, right?
Look,
so,
I know. I just think that in terms of that piece of the argument of like that, having him be a hitter and a pitcher and that extra combined value, I think that for me goes out of the window. Like the novelty of it and like the cool factor is for sure 10 out of 10. But the fact that he's hogging the DH role and is part of a 6-man rotation, I think that is a factor that I wasn't aware of and didn't really consider last year. So, but yeah, Aaron Judge, MVP.
I don't think last year was a 6-man rotation though, was it?
He's never pitched on 4 days rest in his entire career.
Okay.
I know. I was surprised by that too.
Regardless, whether it was a 5 or a 6-man rotation, I do think Aaron Judge is this season's MVP.
Agreed. All right, then let's talk Luis Castillo and this big contract that he just signed with the Seattle Mariners. Congratulations to the Mariners organizations and the fan base out there on the West Coast for getting this deal done with Luis Castillo. Is he the best deal of the deadline? Has that worked out better than any other trade? Feels like it. I mean, Josh Hader's mom might disagree with me, but
I mean, when you can trade for a guy and then sign him to a long-term deal, that's a huge win.
I mean, the knock on the Mariners was that they gave up too much for him, and now that's not the case. I mean,
right. And it did, when I saw that come across my feed, it did make me wonder if the Jays had chosen to give up whoever they would have had to have given up to get him. Could they also have signed him to a long-term deal? Because it feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
right. It really does feel like a missed opportunity, because I remember this being debated at the trade deadline about not wanting to get a pitcher with only a year of control and blah, 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 blah. But if you're giving up those prospects and you're signing him, and that's exactly what the Mariners did, because the Jays, this is still something they had to address it at this deadline. They have to address it in the off season. It felt, when I saw that, I just thought,
I know that there's a factor of the like tax in Canada, but just the, I know it's not an apples to apples comparison, but Jose Barrios and the contract he signed, 7 years, 131 million. Luis Castillo, 5 years, I think it's 108 million.
I believe something like that. Yeah.
Which contract would you rather have right now?
Okay, so there's a few things to unpack here. Please. Okay, because Jose Barrios was one of the most durable starters in all of baseball when they signed him to this deal. He still has been incredibly durable this season, despite his lack of performance. If you look at Jose Barrios' numbers, he has been fairly consistent up into this year. Now, on the other side of things, Luis Castillo has been the most consistent starting pitcher in Major League Baseball since 2017. He struggled after injury this season, but completely righted the ship. His big problem is that he's 30 and he has had injury problem after injury problem since he's been in the league, pretty much. So it's a little bit risky of a contract for a 30-year-old with injury problems. That said, I love Luis Castillo. I love his stuff. He's incredibly fun to watch pitch. When the chips are down, he is great. He's got the experience. Look at the back of his baseball card. It's incredible. So when he's on the field, I would prefer Luis Castillo to Jose Barrios. But that's a weird game to play, right? Like,
it's tough to look back on the season Barrios had and then be extra critical. I mean, that's not fair. That's not a fair comparison. Do you have confidence Barrios bounces back next year? Like, just at face value, you feel good about Barrios as like a number 3 guy next year?
At face value, sure. Given the track record, yes, but he is another year older, and so therein lies the concern, right? I don't know. Is this season an anomaly or is it the start of a decline? Like, I have no clue, right?
Me neither.
So
I know. Had you asked me this in June, will he turn the ship around before the end of the season? I would have said yes. So, like, yeah, I do think he's going to find it again next season. But what the hell do I know? Like, I bet on him being big time for this team in August and September. I really did. I really thought that Barrios would figure out what has ailed him and we'd be talking about him or Gosman for game 2.
well, and in a way it doesn't even matter because he's on the team next year, right? He is in the starting rotation. So whether you have faith in him or you're shaky about him, he is in that rotation every 5th day.
Yeah.
This is true. All right, let's move on from that now. Sticking with the Mariners, Julio Rodriguez back on the IL, second time this month. Lines up with the struggles they are having. How big of a concern is this if you're a Mariners fan? Back injury. Again, this is something that's kind of nagged at him since the home run derby, I think is when we first kind of heard of it, right? Terrible timing if you're not a Jays fan. Not that we wish injuries on anybody.
Crazy concerning. No. I don't know. I can't imagine the opinion being anything but being incredibly concerning as a Mariners fan. It's even a little concerning that they let him do the home run derby when they knew that he was not doing well. And now that they are a big time playoff contender, he's out. I don't know. Like,
and it's a back injury, yes?
Yeah, it's a back injury.
Injury.
Like, that's really concerning, right? Back injuries are super tricky.
Yeah, I mean, stiff back tightness is kind of all they're referring to it as right now.
If he's out for the
IL
season,
for now,
that is a mega hit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to make you feel better about your chances playing Seattle in the first round, right?
Oh, sure.
Like Robbie Ray, Luis Castillo, sure, but no Julio. That's a major hit to that team. So, all right. Speaking of hits to teams, let's look at the Tampa Bay Rays because they've got a couple injuries they're dealing with right now. So we got Baz getting Tommy John surgery, and Lowe out for the season.
Mm-hmm.
Wander Franco's come back recently from that hamate injury, but what's your temperature check on the Tampa Bay Rays, Scott?
There's some weird stuff happening with the Rays. I don't see them as the contender that I saw them even last year. I mean, you hear about that fight in the parking lot between Diaz and Rosarena. They're struggling with injuries and have all season with their pitching staff. I mean, McClanahan's back after injury, but he hasn't looked the same. I don't know. If I'm a Rays fan, I'm pretty nervous about the injuries that we're seeing, and I'm pretty nervous about the way this team has responded.
Jen, do you echo those sentiments, or are they still a team that kind of gives you nightmares going into the playoffs?
Pardon me, what was the last part of your sentence?
Just going into the playoffs. Like, is this a team that you feel uncomfortable with, or is this a team that you feel a little bit better about? What's your temperature check on the Tampa Bay Rays?
I mean, it was good seeing Toronto take 2 out of 4 at the Trop in this series. So that felt like a win in a way, although those 2 losses were pretty atrocious. But my stance on all of this from the beginning has been, I really don't care who they play, because I think every potential matchup can pose certain problems for the Blue Jays, different problems for the Blue Jays potentially. So that's for me, you got to get through all of them one way or another. So
worth noting on the injury front for the Tampa Bay Rays, as Chris Oliver here in the YouTube chat mentions, Tyler Glasnow, recovery from Tommy John, is expected to make his debut at the Rays later this week. So that is one plus if you're a Rays fan. My temperature check on the Rays goes something like this. Wasn't too long ago, I was more scared of the Rays than I was of the Yankees. The Yankees were slumping, and it felt like the Rays might catch them for the AL East. Really felt like the Rays were firing on all cylinders. I would say as of today, no playoff opponent, in any sport, is worth taking lightly. But I would say it's kind of like the Houston Astros are up here, and then it's kind of like everybody else, Jays included.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hopefully we don't play the Houston Astros until the
Tyler Glass.
I
just we can move on, but one last little tidbit here. Tyler Glasnow returning does not worry me.
Okay.
How often does a guy return from Tommy John, even for the full first season he's back, and return to where he was? It's not very often. Normally, Tommy John surgery, it's the 18 months that they're out, and then, they're back, but you don't really see them return to form for another season afterwards.
We have a question here. Dulcimer is asking how Glasnow has looked in his rehab games, and the report I have from September 23rd, he pitched, faced 9 batters, sat down 8 of 9, and his fastball was sitting around 98. So struck out 6, issued 1 walk. So, it's AAA, right? We say that all the time.
That is AAA?
So
he's rehabbing in AAA right now?
Yeah, AAA Durham. The Durham Bulls. All right, let's do we want to talk Cleveland quickly and then get into our big topics of the day, or should we just skip Cleveland? You guys have any strong thoughts on Cleveland, is I guess what I'm saying.
They've won 17 of their last 20 games. They've literally walked away with the AL Central after most of the season it being completely up for grabs. Everyone says they'd rather see the Jays face the Guardians. I am not in that boat.
I agree.
Guardians scare the crap out of me. They have literally found a whole new level in September, and these are the type of teams that go places. Look at what the Braves did last year. Cleveland is dangerous. They've got the pitching. They don't get cold when it comes to their offense because they manage to just spray the ball around the field. They get on base. They run. I don't know. Cleveland.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Their entire lineup just hits the ball, right? It's they're hitting for contact. They're putting the ball in play. Like they can just chip away at you, right? Until they win that game. Yeah, no, I'm concerned about playing Cleveland. I don't think that would be a cakewalk in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that's the easier route necessarily. So and we've seen the Jays offense be cold, right? And up against their pitching. I really don't know how that would look. So I'm, again, one way or another, you've got to beat the team in front of you, whoever it happens to be. There's no point in kind of debating who you'd rather, in my mind.
No,
and to be honest, I just want the playoffs to start at this point.
Yeah.
This season has felt like a grind to me. I think because an awful lot of it has fallen below expectations. There's been an awful lot of frustration. And at this point, I'm just ready to see what they've got when the chips are down.
So this ties all into my topic really well. If you don't mind, if I kind of jump in here with it, Adam.
Can I ask a question? Actually, you ask your question, your topic, because I don't want to step on if it is your topic. It might be.
Okay, so...
But if it's not your topic, then I want to jump back in and just get my last Guardians thing.
Okay.
Tease your topic.
Okay,
Scott.
a few things in the chat. Yes, so a few things in the chat here. Okay. Dalchimer says, remember in the offseason when people said Cleveland didn't have a chance and that they needed to sell off J-Ram and others away. And then Andre says Cleveland is like 2015 KC, and that's actually a really good comparison. But my topic is Francisco Lindor, who just last year people were kind of touting that as a bad trade, a bad signing. Francisco Lindor has a 6.7 F WAR this year, wins above replacement. That's 5th in all of Major League Baseball. Andre Jimenez, who was, along with Ahmed Rosario, traded for Lindor from the Mets to the Guardians. So Jimenez has a 5.9 wins above replacement, good for 12th in MLB, and Rosario has a 283 batting average, top 30. Can you think of a trade that has worked out this well for both teams? Because really, like, both teams are where they are right now because of the guys I just mentioned.
I don't know. That trade for Derek Fisher was pretty awesome.
Okay.
No, that's a great point. Win-win trades don't happen very often. Cleveland probably couldn't have kept Lindor and signed Jose Ramirez, right? Like they didn't. I don't think that's a team that can have 2 mega contracts. Not that Jose Ramirez is necessarily a mega contract. Yeah, I don't know, Scott. That's a good point. Francisco Lindor having a. Was it last year that he played like dog food for the Mets? Yeah, last year.
Yeah.
That dog food season. Yeah, hitting 272 this
year.
100 RBIs, 25 home runs.
Yeah, he's having an incredible year. And on top of it, I mean, you look at Andre Jimenez, same thing for the Guardians, right? First comes out of nowhere. He was an all-star this season. And again, he fits in so well with this makeup for the Guardians organization, right? Like he runs the bases really well, incredibly sound defensively. He gets on base. He runs incredibly well. He's very fast. He's putting up stolen bases. I mean, like maybe as a Jays fan, you got to go back to Alomar Carter trade in like 91 as a trade that worked out well for both teams like that. I don't know.
All right. I just want to ask you this then, because I'm looking at Francisco Lindor's numbers. 272 batting average, 25 home runs, 100 RBIs. Really good seasons, or really good season he's having. Obviously, compared to last year, great season relative to last year. The Mets gave him 10 years, $341 million. Do you think that is what they anticipated getting? This is a guy who, by the way, 2017, 2018, 2019, this is as a 23-year-old hit 33 home runs. As a 24-year-old hit 38 home runs. As a 25-year-old hit 32 home runs again. Do you think 25 home runs and 100 RBIs with a 272 batting average is that a $340 million contract that the Mets should feel good about? I know it's still early, and I know it's a bounce back from a bad year, right? And there's still lots of room to grow, and New York is a tough market to play in, and all these things that we can say to apologize for Francisco Lindor. But that's a big contract for pretty good, not necessarily great numbers. I don't know what his defensive metrics are.
So we talked mega contracts just recently, Adam, and we kind of figured in a 10-year contract like that, if he has 6 exceptional seasons, that's probably worth it. If they win a World Series, you can probably get away with 4.
Yeah, if you win a World Series, you can get away with 1 good season. If he wins the Mets a
Yeah.
World Series and is
Worth the money.
yeah,
Average
it's
to
money well
below
spent.
average. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get your point though. You're saying that when they signed him to that contract, they're expecting even more out of him than they're getting this year.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
like this year is a good bounce back year, but it's still not the level that they would have expected.
Yeah, and I mean, like Scott says, the WAR is good. That's a good WAR. I don't know what that means. I'm just an idiot from Western Canada. Then none of these numbers really jump off the page at me, though, other than like 100 RBIs. I know that's a big milestone, but I don't know where the rest of that WAR is coming from, I guess is what I'm saying, Scott. So can you help me understand more of the great season that Francisco Lindor is having? And I mean that genuinely. I'm not trying to be like a shit disturber.
Defensively, he's been
Is he
the
like
backbone of that Mets team.
Okay. Like I said, I'm not looking at his defensive metrics, so I don't know. So if that's the case,
his weighted runs created plus is the second
Mhm.
highest of his career. His highest being 2018, and he's just a titch below that, right? Weighted runs created plus right now of 129 in comparison to his career high at 132. So there's value coming from that, and then there would be value from his defensive metrics as well.
Okay.
And I mean, his offensive numbers aren't bad. Like, they're good numbers.
Yeah, they're not bad.
They're maybe not what the Mets had envisioned, but they're not far off.
I mean, it's a very comparable season to what Vlady Jr. is putting together. More RBIs for Francisco, right? Similar batting average, similar home run numbers. So sure, I concede that Francisco Lindor is having a really good season. Okay. Unless anybody wants to add anything to this win-win trade, I do want to just double back quickly on the Cleveland Guardians. Terry Francona, your AL Manager of the Year.
Okay, say who? Sorry, say that again.
Francona.
Terry Francona, Cleveland Guardians. I mean, given the context of, I forget who said it in the chat, but remember this offseason when people said Cleveland didn't have a chance, needed to sell off J-Ram while they can. The season they've put together in Cleveland with Terry Francona. Is he the Manager of the Year? Who else deserves consideration?
I'll be honest, it's not something I've given a lot of thought to.
Me neither.
I feel like that's a really
maybe, I don't know who the manager is in Baltimore. Maybe that guy. Who's that guy? What's his name?
Brandon Hyde.
Brandon Hyde. Thank you. Other than that, I mean, I don't think Boone is going to get it in New York the way they've rocketed out of the gates and then kind of coasted for the last half of the season. I don't think Schneider has done enough in like 40 games or whatever he's done.
Scott Survey in Seattle, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Other than, again, I mean, how much do you want to cut him some slack for the injuries? But like, again, looking at that schedule, the last, they had a real chance at home field advantage, losing 3 out of 4 to the Angels, losing to Oakland in that series, losing to the Royals. Like, yeah, maybe he did have the.
It's the one award that is really difficult because there's no numbers to back up your claim that so-and-so is the Manager of the Year, right? Like there is with a player. Yeah. It's how do you possibly evaluate the impact of a manager on the team's performance, right? It's so subjective. So under that umbrella, I would lean toward Hyde in Baltimore, I think, simply because of where the Orioles were last season versus where they are now. And no, they're not going to, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think something really weird would have to happen in the last 9 games for that to be a consideration. But, you know, the fact that they were kind of flirting with it into September is incredible. So
it really is.
Right. I think that to me, I guess, would be definitely deserving of consideration for manager of the year, because you can.
Cleveland was an 80 win team last year. They went 80 and 82, whereas Baltimore went 52 and 110. So
and that
we're
is
looking
normally
at win conversion from year over year. Baltimore has taken a bigger step forward than Cleveland has.
Right. And having to manage sort of the future, deal with the trading of, you're managing these kids. You're making them believe that they actually can perform with the AL East, right? Like that's what they did. Even when they traded away, help me with his name. My brain is tired.
Jorge Lopez, their closer. Jorge Lopez, their closer?
No.
Mancini.
Thank you. Right. Even when they made those trades at the deadline, you know, Hyde was still saying to the players, like, go out there. You've got talent. You can win. Like, we are not throwing in the towel, and they didn't. That's incredible.
All right, Jen, you've twisted my arm. Brandon Hyde, manager of the year. I'm with you.
And if you go throughout history, that's normally who gets it, is the team that has come out of nowhere, blown away projections, improved substantially from the season before. And if you look at this year, the Orioles, I mean, they fit all of those categories. I think Terry Francona is going to be nominated. I mean, what he has done in comparison to the projections, like Cleveland won 80 games last year and we're supposed to digress, and they have not. They have won their division.
Yeah.
Definitely deserves conversation.
All right. Interesting to consider. Jen, let's go with your big topic of the day as we are rounding out the last 15 minutes of the show here.
I wasn't sure how many people were going to be on the panel. So as always, I have 2. So your choice. So one of my questions was, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. having a poor season? We can agree disappointing. Is he having a poor season? So that was going to be one of my topics. The other topic was more lighthearted than that. And it had to do with the Robbie Ray, I can't remember the name of the other player, little post-anthem standoff. And they both got ejected from the game, which is actually really funny. And I know a lot of people enjoy the post-anthem standoff. I personally find it really freaking annoying. I don't even know why. So my question was going to be, what's something that people enjoy, but is maybe a pet peeve to you? So either topic, we can go serious or we can go frivolous.
I'm going to go frivolous here, and I know that this is... I hate the wave. Listen, and I'm all for people doing it. I don't want to be that old man that's like, this is ridiculous. Sit down and watch the game. But I don't vocalize it. But yeah, when I'm at a game and people are doing the wave, I'm just like, sit down. Even though it's a fun thing and everyone's enjoying it and the kids love it. And there's a whole lot of reasons why I shouldn't feel this way.
I greatly dislike the wave as well, but in part because it started, oftentimes fans started at ridiculous times.
Yes. Agreed.
I'm with you. Maybe as a dad, this has influenced my opinion on the wave, but I find myself like being at an Oilers game with my kid and like looking forward to the wave. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to start it, but like she gets excited as an 11-year-old to be part of it. So if that makes her enjoy the sporting experience, like the live event more, I'm here for it. But I do think that like the dad factor or the parent factor, I think is a big reason why I'm okay with it now again. And
again, the topic being things people enjoy that just rubs me the wrong way. Like I totally am all for the kids getting involved with the games because of the wave and how
That's
much fun
not true,
it is.
Scott.
For
Last
everyone.
time you told me to leave my kid at home. You specifically said I was welcome to join you as long as I leave her at home.
I most certainly would not say that.
I'm kidding, of course.
Okay, then what's your pet peeve, Adam?
My pet. Okay, I'm gonna get roasted for this. I know I've mentioned it before. The home run jacket.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew
you
it.
baited me for this one, didn't you, Jen?
I didn't. I swear. It was not planned.
The home run jacket. I mean, again, just going to the wave of like people starting it at weird times or inappropriate times. Wearing the home run jacket doesn't bother me if it's a, big home run in the 8th inning to take the lead or, to put up an insurance run or whatever. But like down 14-3, I don't want to see it. Up 14-3, I don't want to see it. Matt Chapman didn't wear the home run jacket last week. It was the first time all season I'd seen someone turn down the home run jacket.
I think Springer hit a home run in a game that the Jays were losing badly, and he also didn't put it on. Mm-hmm. So that's twice that I know of. I do agree when you're losing by 8 runs and it's the 8th inning and you're basically hitting a garbage time home run. Maybe don't put it on. Maybe just you've hit your home run. Go take a seat, play out the rest of the game, and figure out how to win the next day. I do agree with that. But it doesn't bother me that every team seems to have kind of some sort of fun home run tradition. And the jacket, like looking at it from a fan point of view, the jacket is kind of a cool one. The laundry cart is weird.
Yeah.
Right? Like that one's just, I don't even know how that got started, right?
Yeah.
The big gold chain is kind of obnoxious, but in the vein, I like the jacket because I do like that it has all of their birthplaces represented on it. Like it really actually feels like a team thing versus some of the other things that you see. That I like that they came up with the jackets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Before you jump in here, Adam, this is pretty funny. Dulch Marist is like, garbage time home run would be a cool name for a punk band.
Yes.
We should start one.
Good name for a punk band. It's right up there with Warning Track Power. All right. My comeback question then on the topic of home run jacket. What needs to happen? Let's make our case. Let's paint a picture where this home run jacket ends up and I know this is the 2nd year of the home run jacket. How long does it need to be a thing, or what do the Jays need to win a World Series? What is the criteria that gets that home run jacket an exhibition at St. Mary's at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame?
Ooh.
Yeah, I guess a World Series, or somebody would have to have a season like Aaron Judge.
So Vlady puts up
like Vlady winning MVP, for example.
Okay. That's fair.
Yes.
I'm with you. So a real accolade needs to happen. Okay.
So Guru here says we can agree that Vlady's slumping hard, 4 for 25, and leading the league in hitting into double plays. That's a stat I did not know.
Yeah, I heard that one on the last broadcast. That is a concerning stat. Don't like to see that. So that's Jen's other topic. Let's talk that for a second. Vlady Jr., is he having a... How did you put it, Jen? What was your words?
I asked if he was having a poor season. Like it's definitely a disappointing season. Is it a poor season? Is it poor only because, or seemingly poor only because by his own expectations, it's below expectation, well below. I mean, last year he came relatively close to winning MVP and would have won MVP if there wasn't a unicorn in California.
Right.
And people were talking about him winning multiple MVPs over his career, and he's just getting started. And it just seems like a huge step back. And I think the concerning thing for me has been the fact that he hasn't made an adjustment. Right?
Okay.
We're at
You're
the
not
end of
wrong.
September, and he has not managed to make an adjustment. And that's, I'm not necessarily saying that it is a poor season, but I am surprised that somebody who is such a good hitter, or supposed to be such a, not good, sorry, great hitter with, you know, his pedigree, hasn't been able to make an adjustment.
Okay. Great points. Before I give my thoughts, I want your opinions on his defensive play as a first baseman.
I haven't compared his metrics to any other first baseman, so I don't know how he stacks up in the league. The eye test tells me he's doing a pretty good job out there. I mean, I certainly can't do the splits, and he's had a fair number of throws bounced in the dirt or airmailed to him that he's sort of saved the day on, and that's been pretty impressive. You know, I think he's probably, again, based on the eye test alone, I think he's at least an average defender at first base, right? He's certainly not costing them. And I am impressed by that. Like
This is interesting here.
What's interesting?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm number one. I'm with you in that the eye test, he's looked really good. Edward in chat says we need to factor in minor league stadium into Vlady's stats last year. It def helped his numbers. In what world is 270 plus with 30 bombs disappointing? Expecting 310, 40, and 120 every year is unfair, and that's true.
Okay, so this is where I wanted to come in and ask about like your thoughts on him defensively, because again, I don't know the weighted runs, whatever, defensive outs above weather adjusted stolen bases. I don't know any of that stuff. I know that Matt Chapman doesn't have the best defensive metrics this year either, but we would all agree elite third baseman still this year. Vlady feels like, you know, passes the eyeball test defensively at first base. Better than last year. Defensively at first base. I think we can all agree on that. I don't think he's necessarily Gold Glove first baseman, but I think he's either in the conversation or knocking at the door for Gold Glove first baseman. So with that, I want to go back to Francisco Lindor, who we have established as having a really good season. And other than RBIs, Vladdy's having a better season. More home runs. So Vladdy's got 30 home runs. Batting average, 4 points better. Slugging percentage, 30 points better. OPS, 30 points better. Like, he's got an OPS of 823, slugging of 482, 30 home runs, and 89 RBIs. That's a really good season in my books. Is this his sophomore slump season? I mean, hopefully that's all it is, right? I would also like to say, as Jen pointed out, hasn't really made that adjustment all season long. And we lost Scott. If he can hit 30 home runs and bat, 278, 276 without making any adjustments midseason, I think that's pretty impressive. I mean, I would obviously love to see him make the adjustment, but
asking if it was a poor season was definitely a strong word, right? I probably could have phrased that better. I guess the way that I'm looking at it, it's definitely not a poor season when you look at the numbers, but he is the player around which the offense is supposed to click, right? And if he's grounding into all of these double plays, and as I said earlier, not making the adjustments he needs to make, is he still that person around whom the offense is clicking, right? That's, despite the numbers being decent or better than decent, I don't feel like he's the one driving the offense.
Who's the one driving the offense then? I don't disagree with you necessarily, but okay.
Right. I don't know that I don't know that it's been one specific player this season. Right. At times it's been Kirk, at times it's been Espinal, at times it's been Bo recently, right? Whoever. So I don't think it's been one person, but I'm not sure at any point it's really been him.
Agreed.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, just looking at, let's just take the Yankees quickly as a quick comparison. Aaron Judge has been the, obviously, spark plug for that team all season long. Is that the difference for the Blue Jays? Is if the Blue Jays, everything else was the same, but Vlady was hitting close to 50 home runs, are we winning the AL East in a runaway? Or
forget close to 50 if he were hitting, 40, let's say even, right? Or just if you take those numbers and you just titch them all up just a little bit, right? Just a little bit, then maybe maybe the Jays are right there with the Yankees fighting for that division spot, for example, right?
Yeah.
Scott, anything to add? I do have one last question I want to get to from the live chat here before we say our goodbyes. If you guys have a few minutes, I know we're going a little bit long here, but are you both okay for a few more minutes?
My internet's been terrible, and I'm sorry. It keeps freezing and cutting out. I didn't mean to.
That's all right. That's all right. You've been not too noticeably an issue on this end, Scott. So, so we got a comment from the live chat. I'm sorry, I've lost track of who said it, but I think a few different people actually were talking about it. Comparing who won and lost trades, how are we feeling about Tapia for Grichuk?
I think Tapia probably fits better on this team than Grichuk would have, but I mean, marginally.
Grichuk made some really good catches. He was oftentimes very frustrating at the plate. Like he would hit those bombs that, gave them the lead or whatever the case might be, but he was so unbelievably inconsistent. Yeah, I really think he sort of just, his role on the team was, they needed to, But it probably works out for both sides, that trade, but we're not neither one of them is a star in any way, right?
Yeah.
Versus talking about like Francisco Lindor, right? He's potentially a star, right? So
I mean, we talked about this when it happened, right? They traded a fourth outfielder for a fourth outfielder. I guess it's sort of worked out.
Do you think? And I'm not coming at this.
Neither of them have been.
When I ask this question, I'm not coming at this with any sort of like insight into Grichuk being a disturbance in the clubhouse. Okay, but before the kids got called up, before we signed a George Springer, like Randall Grichuk was, the face of the franchise as we transitioned away from the Batista, Encarnacion, Donaldson era, right? He was like the guy. He was our outfielder. He was our handsome guy. Do you think just in terms of like being a fourth outfielder that maybe Raimel Tapia is more okay with that role than Randall Grichuk would have been in Toronto? Because that can sometimes be a hidden factor, one of those intangibles where Grichuk goes from being like not the superstar, but like the guy who's on the, commercial break ad spots every 5 seconds on Sportsnet to all of a sudden not being in the limelight anymore. Whereas I don't think Tapia came into the team with that expectation of like, hey, I'm going to be not necessarily the face of the franchise. Maybe that's too strong, but
I don't know how Grichuk necessarily viewed himself. I was covering the team when he was with the Jays, and I was covering the team when he signed that contract extension. And every conversation I had with him, On and off the record, he seemed relatively humble. Seemed like a decent guy, but definitely I don't think could live up to that contract necessarily. So the trade is fine. Like, it's, to be honest, I had forgotten Grichuk even existed until you brought him up, right? Because he didn't, his role wasn't big enough on this team in terms of the impact that he had day to day.
Like, because we talk about Whit Merrifield coming in and being a guy that, like, the organization doesn't really have a role for, right? And going from being like an everyday guy to being a spot starter and to give the main guys days off, right? I always wonder how that works when you are the incumbent and not the new guy, right? Like, it's one thing to be the new addition who hasn't, like, earned his spot yet and to be able to, like, not rock the boat about it. It can be another thing to be the guy where you're like, no, this has been my team for the last 5 years, and now I'm on the outside looking in, Again, Bo Bichette has had a great September. I don't want to take anything away from what Bo Bichette has had, but I do kind of go back to that a little bit when he was struggling and, wondering if that was psychologically maybe a factor where he, was the face of the new wave coming up with Vlady, right? For so long, where it was the Vlad and Bo show. And then by the time this year rolls around, he's definitely not an afterthought. He is a major contributor to this team. But I just mean, like, if you look at the media spots that are out there, whether it's on Blue Jays social media or on Sportsnet and the commercial breaks and stuff, right? Like, there's a lot more faces to share that limelight with. And we weren't seeing him having fun necessarily in the dugout. He sure looks like he's having fun now. I mean, he's playing better. It's easier to have fun when you're playing better, but I think
there is a lot going on with Bo. I think, yeah. I mean,
a lot of off-field stuff going on with Bo.
There were a lot of off-field stuff, and I think that would have been very challenging to deal with while going out and taking the field every day. And then, I don't know. I really don't know. It is great to see him have a great September.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully it carries on into October. All right, let's wrap it up there then. Thanks for everybody in the live chat. We were pushing 40 for most of the last 2 hours. So thanks for everybody for getting your comments, your insight in, your feedback as we go. Let's wrap it up with this. Jen, nice to see you as always. Where can people find more of you?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at baseball_Jen, Jen with 2 N's.
Very cool. Scott, Mr. Belford, your new comedy album is out. Where can people find it?
Staying Together for the Cat is now available wherever you get your albums. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Check it out.
Do you have a cat?
I do have a cat.
Okay, just checking.
Cat Stevens.
It is one of the top cat names of all time.
That is good.
Very cool. All right. Cheers to everybody for watching. As Joey in the chat is saying, hit the like button. I always forget to do my due diligence there. We're getting lots of thank yous in the chat from everybody for the great show. The three of us really held it down. I know Garth had internet issues as well. Thanks to Garth for popping in while he could. Joel couldn't make it. I'm sure he'll be back again next time. Go Jays. We got some tough series coming up against the Yankees. So hopefully we finish this season strong, and we'll catch everybody on the next one. Cheers.